Redstone Manor looked peaceful from the outside, its stone walls glowing gold beneath the late afternoon sun, but for Lila Harwood, it had always felt more like a prison than a home. Wind swept through the courtyard, stirring dust across the cobblestones, but even the breeze dared not interrupt the old Duke when one of his moods came upon him. And this afternoon he was in the worst temper Lila had seen in months. He stood before her in his heavy velvet coat, his cane planted like a weapon between them. The ranch hands fell silent. A few paused their chores to watch, though they pretended not to. Everyone knew that when the Duke grew angry, someone, usually Lila, would suffer his tongue. Lila kept her hands clasped in front of her, trying to hide their trembling. She had always moved like a quiet ghost across these grounds, careful not to anger him. But even ghosts were noticed sometimes, and today she had dared to return late from her errands in town. "You useless girl." The Duke spat, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "Can't even fetch a simple list of supplies on time." Lila tried to speak, her voice barely above a breath. "The bridge was out, Your Grace. I had to take the long road." "Excuses," he barked, cutting her off. "Always excuses. Who would want anything to do with you?" The words struck her harder than a slap. She felt her cheeks burn as several ranch hands lowered their eyes, ashamed on her behalf but too afraid to speak. That sentence, cold, sharp, calculated to wound, floated through her like a poisoned arrow. Who would want anything to do with you? The Duke wasn't finished. His voice rose, sharp as broken glass. "You're plain. You're meek. You have no family, no fortune, no beauty worth mentioning. I took you in out of pity, and perhaps I should have let the good Lord decide your fate instead." Layla's breath caught painfully. She had long learned not to cry in front of him. Tears were a sign of weakness he fed upon. But today, something inside her, something fragile and worn, finally cracked. She turned away so he wouldn't see her eyes glistening. That small act of defiance only irritated him further. "Look at me when I speak." The Duke roared, but she couldn't. Every instinct, every ounce of her dignity, urged her to walk, just walk, before he shattered what remained of her spirit. She lowered her head and hurried past him, her boots hitting the dusted stones with a quick, breathless rhythm. She didn't stop until she reached the far edge of the property, where the manor's fences melted into the wild open plain. Only then did she let her tears fall. She pressed her palms to her face, trying to smother the sound of her sobs. The Duke's voice echoed in her mind again and again. Plain, useless, unwanted. She had heard such insults before, but something about today felt final, like even her soul had grown tired of bending to his cruelty. "He's wrong." The voice came from behind her, quiet, steady, belonging to someone who moved through the world with the certainty of a storm. Lila froze, her heart pounding. Slowly she turned. There he stood, the Apache king. Kaya Blackhawk had appeared like a shadow cut from the sun itself, tall, broad-shouldered, his raven hair falling loose to his waist. His dark eyes watched her with a softness she had not seen from anyone in years. He took one step closer, then another, until she could feel the warmth of him in the cool afternoon air. "The Duke speaks from poison, not truth," he said. "He does not see you." Lila wiped her cheeks, too stunned to speak. She had met Kaya only twice before, by chance at the riverbank where she sometimes escaped to breathe. Each time, he had shown her a gentleness that felt more dangerous than anything, because it was something she feared she could grow to need. "How long? How long were you standing there?" She whispered. "Long enough," Kaya answered softly, "to know that your heart deserves better than his hatred." She looked down, overwhelmed. "But he's right. Who would want anything to do with me?" Kaya lifted her chin with the lightest touch of his fingers. "I would," he said. "And I already do." His words wrapped around her like a lifeline, and for the first time in her life, Lila felt seen, not scorned. Her world, once small and suffocating, suddenly stretched wide as the horizon behind him, and she did not yet know it. But she already belonged to the Apache king. Lila could still feel the warmth of Kaya's fingers beneath her chin long after his hand dropped away. It was as if the Apache king had touched not just her skin, but something buried deep within her, something no one at Redstone Manor had ever bothered to reach. She stepped back, breath unsteady. Her heart hammered as if it didn't know whether to flee or fall into him. You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "If the Duke's men see you, they won't," Kaya replied, his voice as calm as a still river. "I choose my steps as carefully as a wolf." And besides, his eyes lifted toward the manor, darkening with something fierce. "I go where the woman of my heart needs me." Layla's breath caught. "Woman of your heart?" "Kaya, you barely know me." He stepped closer, slow and deliberate, like he was giving her time to stop him if she wished. "She didn't. I know enough," he said quietly. "I know you carry sorrow like others carry jewelry. I know your spirit is gentle but unbroken. And I know," his voice dropped, warm, tender, dangerous, "that you look at me as if you've spent your whole life waiting for someone to see you." Her cheeks flushed furiously. She shook her head, embarrassed by how easily he read her. I don't know how to be someone's anything." Kaya smiled, not mocking, not pitying, but as if her doubt touched something protective inside him. "Then let me teach you what it means to be cherished." The wind swept through the tall grass, lifting strands of her hair. Kaya reached out and tucked one behind her ear, his fingers brushing her skin with reverence. Lila didn't flinch this time. She should have. Every rule, every warning drilled into her by the Duke whispered that she was playing with fire. An Apache king was not a man she was supposed to speak to, much less feel drawn to. The Duke considered all natives as little more than threats to be driven off his land, but Kaya wasn't a threat to her. He was the first person who made the world feel wide instead of caged. "Why do you keep finding me?" she asked softly. Kaya tilted his head, studying her with eyes that seemed to hold entire storms. "Because your loneliness calls to me. And because I choose you, Lila Harwood." Her name in his voice felt like a vow. She should have stepped away. Instead, she found herself reaching out to touch his wrist, light as a whisper. Kaya's breath hitched, and she could feel the strength of him coiled beneath her fingertips. "You shouldn't say such things," she whispered, looking down. "If the Duke discovers we've spoken, if he tries to harm you again," Kaya murmured, taking her hand fully in his, "I will stand between you and his cruelty. My people do not bow to men like him." His thumb brushed across her knuckles, slow and sure, sending a tremor down her spine. Then he glanced toward the setting sun. "You should return before darkness falls. But tonight, when the moon rises, I will come to your window." Lila's lips parted in shock. "My window?" His smile deep and confident, unshakable, the smile of a man who had crossed mountains and survived battles. "If you wish me to stay away, say so." She hesitated. The Duke's insults still rang in her ears. His cruelty had become her world. But for the first time, she saw a different world waiting, one with starlit skies, a warrior's strength, and a love that didn't belittle or break her. "No," she whispered. "Don't stay away." Kaya breathed out as if he'd been waiting for that answer. He pressed her hand to his chest, right above his heart. She could feel the steady beat, powerful and sure. "Then you belong to me now," he said, his voice low as dusk. "Not as a captive, not as a prize, but as the woman I choose." Her knees nearly buckled. "Kaya, people don't belong to each other like that." "In my tribe," he said gently, "belonging means trust. It means protection. It means knowing someone will cross deserts for you." His gaze softened. "Do you trust me?" The truth rose from her chest before she could stop it. Yes. Kaya lifted her hand to his lips and kissed the back of it slow, reverent, sealing a promise no one else knew existed. The old Duke believed she was alone. Worthless, unwanted dot, he had no idea that under the rising moon, Lila already belonged to the Apache king. The first night Kaya appeared beneath her window, Lila truly believed her heart might leap from her chest. She had barely finished blowing out her lantern when she heard it, the soft thud of hooves on the ground below, then the whisper of someone climbing the trellis vines that clung to the manor wall. She rushed to the window, half terrified, half breathless with anticipation. Kaya Blackhawk stood in the moonlight, balanced on the narrow wooden lattice as if it were solid earth. His dark hair shimmered like obsidian, his skin glowing bronze beneath the pale night. When he looked up and saw her face peeking through the curtains, he smiled slow and warm, a smile that melted every ounce of fear she carried. "You came," she whispered. Unable to believe the boldness of it, "You called," he answered simply. He climbed with the sure-footed grace of a mountain cat. By the time he reached her window, Lila had stepped back, allowing him inside. Kaya landed lightly on the floor, silent as breath. The room, her cold little chamber filled with the Duke's unwanted cast-offs, suddenly felt alive. Kaya glanced around, his expression tightening when he saw the small bed, the empty walls, the thin blanket. "He keeps you like a servant," he said softly. "Less than that." Lila hugged her arms around herself. She didn't want Kaya to see the worst parts of her life, but he saw more than she ever admitted aloud. "I'm used to it," she murmured. "You shouldn't be," Kaya replied, stepping close enough that his nearness warmed her chilled skin. "A woman's heart with your gentleness should be honored, not crushed." His words made something flutter inside her chest, hope or longing, or maybe both. From that night onward, Kaya visited her almost every evening, always under the cover of moon and stars. Sometimes he climbed the trellis. Sometimes he whistled softly from the yard, and she would sneak down to meet him beneath the cottonwood tree. Their talk stretched for hours about his tribe, her lonely childhood, the sky above them, the dreams they never dared voice in daylight. Kaya spoke of mountains that cut through the clouds, of nights where wolves howled to the stars, and of the battles he had fought to protect his people. "You're a king," she whispered one night, awe shining in her eyes. "Why come to me?" "Because even kings need something to fight for," he said. "And I found mine." Lila's cheeks flushed, her gaze falling to the dusty ground. "No one's ever talked to me the way you do." "That is because no one has ever seen you." Kaya brushed a fingertip along her cheek, sending warmth through her veins. "You are gentle, but strong. Scared, yet brave. And when you look at me," his voice dropped, "you make a warrior's heart feel peace." Those nights became the lifeline that kept her spirit alive. Every time the Duke shouted or belittled her, or dismissed her as worthless, she held on to the knowledge that someone extraordinary saw her differently. But every sweet moment carried a shadow. Whenever Kaya left her window, Lila would watch him vanish into the darkness with dread coiling in her chest. The Duke was becoming restless. Servants whispered that he'd seen tracks near the North Paddock's Apache tracks. The ranch hands set traps along the fences. The old Duke took to patrolling the grounds himself, convinced someone was trespassing, and still Kaya came. He was careful, painstakingly so, but Lila's fear grew heavier each night. She began noticing candles burning later in the manor, shadows moving near the barns, the glint of rifles in the moonlight. "Kaya," she whispered one night, gripping his hand. "If the Duke finds out, I know," Kaya said gently, "but I will not leave you to suffer alone. It's too dangerous." "Loving you is dangerous," he said, "but it is a danger I choose." Her breath caught at the word loving, but she didn't dare ask if he truly meant it. She felt it in every stolen moment, every brush of his hand, every whisper shared in the dark, and somewhere deep inside, she realized she loved him too. Still, the danger grew day by day. One evening, as they sat beneath the cottonwood tree, Kaya stiffened, listening. Lila followed his gaze and spotted a glint of metal near the stables. A rifle barrel. Kaya pulled her close, shielding her. "He is watching." She trembled in his arms. "What do we do?" Kaya looked down at her as if the entire world narrowed to the fear in her eyes. "We hold on to each other. And when the time comes," he vowed, brushing a kiss against her forehead, "I will take you away from this place." But Lila knew that each night of love, each secret touch and whispered promise brought the danger closer. Their bond was growing stronger, and the Duke's suspicions were growing sharper. The wild was drawing them together. But it was only a matter of time before the world tried to tear them apart. The morning light poured through Redstone Manor's high windows, illuminating dust motes that danced lazily in the quiet halls. Lila had hoped that after another secret night with Kaya, the world might leave her in peace. But peace was never part of her life under the old Duke's roof. It began with something small, a missing shawl. She had worn it the previous evening when she snuck out to meet Kaya beneath the cottonwoods. Now it was gone. At first, she assumed she had misplaced it, but then she noticed footprints in the soft earth near the northern paddocks. They weren't the tracks of a man in boots. They were larger, broader, and unmistakably native in shape. Her stomach twisted with both hope and fear. Hope because Kaya had been there. Fear because the Duke's servants might see. Fear because the Duke himself was never far from suspicion. By noon, whispers had started to ripple through the manor. The Duke's steward, a nervous man who never dared raise his voice, mentioned to a passing servant, "Tracks near the north fence. Looks like someone's been here last night." The words were careful, cautious, but they reached the wrong ears fast, the Duke's ears. When the Duke saw the tracks himself, his face darkened, his hands clenching the cane he wielded like a weapon. Fury ignited inside him like wildfire. He had always considered Lila a burdensome ward, someone he tolerated out of a perverse sense of obligation. Now the idea that someone or something was sneaking into his manor to claim her enraged him to the core. "That girl dares defy me?" he bellowed, his voice echoing through the stone halls. "She thinks she can charm a savage and escape my authority?" Lila froze as his words pierced the air. She had tried to act natural, to pretend nothing was amiss, but the Duke's gaze fell on her like lightning. His eyes narrowed, cold and accusing. "You!" he spat. "Come here." Hard hammering, she stepped forward, and he seized her wrist with a strength that made her wince. His face was inches from hers, twisted in disbelief and rage. "Do you know what you've done?" he demanded. "Do you realize how foolish it is to play with forces you do not understand?" I only went outside." Lila stammered, trying to explain. But the words sounded weak and childish, and the Duke's fury only grew. "You've been visited by the Apache, haven't you?" he accused, his voice low, dangerous. "You've been hiding a man under my roof?" She nodded faintly, unable to lie. Every instinct screamed that if she did, he would punish her in ways that would scar her more than his words ever could. The Duke's face darkened further. He began pacing the room, muttering to himself. "A girl I've tried to protect? Flirting with a savage? Under my very windows? I will not allow it. I will not." He gave orders to lock Layla in her room. She protested, tears welling, but he dismissed her softly, like a storm brushing past a fragile flower. "You will stay here until I decide your fate," he said. "No one enters. No one leaves. And if this Apache dares to return—" The threat hung in the air, heavy and terrifying. Lila sat on the edge of her narrow bed, hands clenched into fists. Her heart pounded not from the Duke's words, but from the memory of Kaya's presence the night before, his fingers brushing hers, his voice whispering promises beneath the stars. She had felt alive in ways she never had in the stifling halls of Redstone Manor, and now the Duke's discovery threatened to take that life away. Hours passed slowly. Each creak of the floorboards, each distant step of a servant, set her nerves on edge. The shawl that had begun this chain of events now seemed like a symbol of everything she risked for those stolen moments with Kaya. And yet, despite fear, despite anger, despite the looming threat of punishment, Lila felt a spark of courage. Kaya had promised her he would never abandon her. He had already claimed her heart, even if the Duke did not yet understand it. She pressed her hands to her chest, feeling her heartbeat steady against the rising panic. She didn't know how Kaya would reach her, or if he even could under the Duke's scrutiny. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty: she would never return to being the helpless, frightened girl the Duke expected her to be. Somewhere beyond the manor walls, under the open sky, Kaya was waiting. And if the Duke had made a mistake in discovering their secret, it was this: Lila's loyalty, her spirit, and her heart already belonged to the Apache king, and no amount of fear or force could undo that. The Duke had uncovered the secret, but he had yet to understand its consequences. Lila was no longer just a ward. She was the chosen of Kaya Blackhawk, and the Apache king would come for her. The Apache council had gathered under the stars atop the high mesas, their torches flickering in the night wind. Kaya Blackhawk stood at the center, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the moon. But even the moonlight could not soften the worry etched into his face. "My people," he said quietly, his deep voice carrying across the circle, "we face a choice. The woman I love is in danger, held against her will. And yet, if I take her from the Duke, I risk the wrath of his men and even a clash with the frontier settlers. This path could ignite a war." An elder stepped forward, his wrinkled hands gripping a staff. "Kaya," he said, his voice measured, "your heart is strong, but the tribe comes first. If you go, you endanger all of us. A war with the settlers could destroy the Sky Arrow forever." Kaya's jaw tightened. "I am the chief," he said. "I am sworn to protect my people. Yes, but my duty is also to the woman I love. To leave her in that manner under that cruel Duke would be dishonorable. She suffers, and I cannot stand idle while she suffers." A young warrior spoke next, his tone sharp but respectful. "You risk everything for one woman, Kaya. Are you certain your heart will not blind you? There is danger in the open plains, and worse in the Duke's wrath." Kaya looked up at the stars, steadying himself. The wind tugged at his hair, the desert stretching endless beneath the mesa. "I am certain," he said. "No amount of danger will stop me from claiming the woman who already belongs to me. I will face the Duke's wrath, the settlers' anger, and even the council's disapproval. Nothing matters more than her safety and her freedom." The council fell silent, knowing his resolve could not be shaken. Kaya's voice carried the weight of mountains and the fury of storms. His decision was final. By midnight, he mounted his black stallion, its mane whipping in the wind like a banner of defiance. Every leather strap, every piece of his gear was placed with care, not for ceremony, but for survival. Tonight, he would cross the Duke's land alone, under the cover of darkness, risking ambush, gunfire, and traps. Lila lay in her chamber, her heart both terrified and expectant. She could hear the faint hooves in the distance, the wind whispering against the manor walls, and she knew it was him. She had sensed Kaya coming, as if some invisible thread bound them together across the distance of fields and forests. The Duke, however, was wide awake. He had stationed guards along every corridor and near every window. He paced in his study, muttering threats against the Apache king. convinced he could intercept the mysterious warrior who had dared trespass upon his land. And then, just as the manor clock struck midnight, a shadow passed across Lila's window. Her heart leapt. She opened the shutter slightly and saw him, Kaya Blackhawk, her Apache king, standing with the quiet confidence of a man who had faced death more times than anyone in the Duke's territory could imagine. He beckoned, and she knew what she must do. There was no hesitation, no fear strong enough to keep her behind locked doors. She slipped into the shadows of the hallway, her bare feet silent against the wooden floors. Guided by the knowledge that he would protect her, Kaya caught her hand outside, the cold night air biting at their skin, but his warmth spread like fire through her veins. "Are you ready?" he whispered. "Yes," she said, voice trembling but resolute. "I trust you." Gunfire erupted behind them. The Duke's men had discovered their escape. Kaya spun his stallion, sweeping Lila onto the back, and they vanished into the night. Bullets tore through the air, thudding against fence posts, splintering wood, but Kaya's mastery of the terrain kept them safe. He knew every canyon, every hidden ravine, every shallow stream where the horse could run silently and swiftly. Hours passed in tense silence as they raced through the wild plains. Lila clung to him, her face pressed against his broad back, feeling the strength of him, the rhythm of his heart, the certainty that no one in the world could match his devotion. At last, they reached the edge of Kaya's territory. The land opened into a quiet canyon where the Sky Arrow tribe awaited, torches flickering across the rocks. His people stepped forward, some wary, some awed, but all recognizing the woman who had stolen their chief's heart. Kaya dismounted, pulling Lila close. "You are safe now," he murmured, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple. "No one can touch you here." Tears spilled down her cheeks, tears of relief, joy, and the overwhelming realization that the world she feared had finally ended. The Duke's fury would follow, of course. But for the first time, Lila felt something stronger than fear, something fierce and undeniable. She was claimed, loved, and protected by a man who would risk his throne for her, and she would follow him anywhere. The night air was thick with tension as Kaya and Lila approached the edge of the Duke's land. Shadows stretched across the plains like silent predators, and every rustle of grass made Lila's pulse quicken. She clung to Kaya's broad back as his black stallion glided over the rough terrain, muscles coiled like springs, hooves barely making a sound. "Are you all right?" Kaya asked, his deep voice low, steady, and unshakable. "I think so," Lila whispered, her fingers gripping his coat. "But what if they catch us?" "They won't," he promised, though his jaw tightened. Kaya knew the Duke's men were merciless, trained to follow orders without hesitation. They had set traps, patrolled the perimeter, and even stationed snipers along the tree line. But Kaya had spent his life reading the land like a map, anticipating every danger, every hidden threat. The first gunshot split the night air, a sharp crack that made Lila flinch. "Keep low," Kaya shouted. The stallion veered into a shallow ravine, using its natural curve as cover. Bullets tore through the night where they had been seconds before, splintering wood and sending dust flying. Kaya's grip on the reins was firm, one hand steady on Lila's back, guiding her to safety. Lila's heart hammered in her chest. She had never experienced such fear and adrenaline. Every instinct screamed to panic, but she felt strangely calm under Kaya's control. His presence was like armor, shielding her not just physically, but emotionally. "Hold on tight," he commanded, and the horse leapt over a fallen log, landing with a thud that rattled the night air. The bullets whizzed past, embedding themselves in the ground and trees around them. Why are they shooting?" Lila gasped, half in fear, half in awe. "They want to stop us," Kaya said grimly, his dark eyes flashing under the moonlight. "But we will not let them." Not tonight. Not ever. They raced across the plains, the wind tearing at their hair, the moon illuminating a silver path for their escape. Kaya guided the horse through narrow gullies and rocky terrain that the Duke's men could never follow at full speed. Each time a gunshot rang out, Lila felt her life hang by a thread. Yet every time she looked at Kaya, she saw nothing but certainty. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, Kaya led them to a hidden creek. The horse slipped into the shallow water, splashing silently. Lila clung to Kaya as they moved through the trees, the underbrush camouflaging them from prying eyes. Bullets struck nearby trees, splintering them, but Kaya pressed forward. His movements precise, practiced dot, and then they saw it, the torches of the Sky Arrow tribe flickering in the canyon beyond. The sound of drums and the low hum of voices reassured her. They were home. Kaya dismounted swiftly, helping Lila to her feet. She stumbled slightly, exhausted, but he held her firmly. "We're safe now," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "No one can touch you here." Tears filled her eyes, not just from fear, but from relief and gratitude. She had been trapped under the Duke's cruel rule for so long, and now she was free. Free in the arms of a man who had risked everything for her. A man who claimed her not as a possession, but as his equal. His chosen. The tribe members approached cautiously at first, wary of the newcomer, but when they saw Kaya holding Lila, their chief's promise to her protection clear in every movement, they stepped aside. The women offered her blankets and water, the children staring with curious, wide eyes. Lila sank into Kaya's chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart. "You risked everything for me," she whispered. I don't know how to thank you." Kaya pressed a gentle kiss to her temple. "You don't need to thank me. You belong to me. And I belong to you. That is enough." For the first time in her life, Lila felt a kind of peace she had never known. The Duke's cruelty, the endless nights of fear, the cold halls of the manor, they were behind her now. In front of her lay freedom, love, and a man who would fight the world to keep her safe. And yet she knew the Duke's fury would not fade. He would not rest until he understood how the useless girl he had mocked had become the woman claimed by the Apache king. But for now, under the starlit sky, surrounded by Kaya's people, Lila allowed herself to breathe, to hope, and to dream. She had been rescued, but more than that, she had been seen, loved, and claimed by a man whose devotion no bullet, no trap, and no cruelty could break. The Apache king had kept his promise. She was free, and she would never forget the night the wild plains themselves became their shield. The first rays of dawn stretched across the canyon, painting the rugged cliffs in gold and amber. Lila awoke wrapped in a warm blanket, the scent of sage and campfire smoke filling the air. For the first time in years, she didn't feel trapped, belittled, or unwanted. She opened her eyes and saw Kaya Blackhawk sitting beside her, his dark hair tousled, the early light casting shadows across his strong features. "You slept well," he said quietly, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "Yes," she murmured, still unsure if this was reality or a dream. "I can't believe this is my life now." "Believe it," Kaya replied, his hand warm around hers. "You are safe. You are wanted. You are mine, Lila, and now you belong here with us." Layla's gaze swept across the Sky Arrow camp. The tribe had gathered, curious but cautious, to witness the arrival of the woman their chief had claimed. Some women whispered among themselves, children peered at her with wide eyes, and elders observed her with measured scrutiny. This was not the life of the manor. This was wild, open, raw, but it was real, and it was free. The first days were difficult. Lila had spent her life within the stone walls of Redstone Manor, her every movement controlled by servant schedules and the Duke's whims. Here, Every task was hard and physical, gathering water from the creek, helping prepare meals, learning to move silently among the cliffs. She fell often, scraped her hands, and sometimes felt utterly out of place. But Kaya never let her feel discouraged. "You are stronger than you know," he reminded her one afternoon, guiding her as she balanced on a narrow ledge overlooking the canyon. "Strength is not just in your muscles, Lila. It is in your heart, your courage, and your will to keep moving forward." Gradually, the women of the tribe began to accept her. At first, they were wary of the newcomer, unsure of her place among them. But Kaya's unwavering protection and the gentle confidence she displayed in helping with chores earned their respect. They taught her to gather herbs, tend small gardens, and craft simple tools. Lila began to feel a sense of belonging she had never known. Even the children warmed to her, calling her Moonflower for the delicate way she moved through the camp and the quiet. Strength in her eyes, Lila and Kaya spent hours together under the wide, open sky, sharing stories of the past and hopes for the future. He showed her how to read the stars, track animals, and respect the land as his ancestors had. She laughed more than she had in years, each chuckle like sunlight breaking through clouds that had long shadowed her heart. But amidst the peace, there was a quiet tension. Lila knew the Duke's fury would not be easily silenced. She had escaped, yes, but he would never forget the woman he had belittled and the Apache king who had taken her. Kaya, too, carried the weight of this knowledge. His eyes sometimes darkened when he thought of the Duke's possible retaliation. Despite this, he remained a constant pillar of strength for her. "Do not fear what we cannot see," he told her one evening as they sat together beneath a massive cottonwood tree. "The Duke may rage, but here, in this place, you are mine, and nothing can undo that." Lila rested her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear. She knew he meant it not just as a promise, but as a declaration of devotion and protection. For the first time, she did not feel invisible. She did not feel like a pawn or a burden. Here, among the Sky Arrow, she was someone who mattered. Someone loved. Someone chosen. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing day, Lila's confidence grew. She no longer flinched at Kaya's touch. She no longer trembled when the wind howled across the canyon. She had a home, a family, and a love that could not be measured by gold, social rank, or the approval of men like the Duke. She had survived cruelty, fear, and isolation. But in Kaya's arms and under the open sky of the Apache lands, Lila discovered the greatest truth of all, that love and freedom, when earned and protected, could heal even the deepest wounds. And as the tribe gathered around the fire each night, sharing songs and laughter, Lila knew in her heart that this was where she belonged, not at Redstone Manor, not under the Duke's shadow, but here, among the Apache, with Kaya Blackhawk, the man who had risked everything to make her his. She had found her place, her purpose, and her heart's home. Weeks had passed since Lila's escape from Redstone Manor. Life among the Sky Arrow Apache had become a rhythm of freedom, laughter, and love. Lila had learned the ways of the tribe, found strength in her own hands and heart, and discovered a depth of devotion in Kaya Blackhawk that no words could fully capture. Yet, far beyond the canyon walls, the old Duke's fury had not faded, it had only grown. Simmering like a storm waiting to break, the first word of her survival came to him. In whispers from neighboring ranchers, the useless girl he had mocked was alive, and she was seen riding with a dark warrior through the northern plains. At first, he refused to believe it. "Impossible," he muttered, pacing the stone halls of Redstone Manor. But the reports persisted. Traders and travelers described a tall, imposing Apache, always by her side, guiding her with a firm yet gentle hand. The Duke's heart, so accustomed to fear and control, twisted with rage and disbelief. He summoned his steward. "Go to the lands beyond the creek," he commanded, voice harsh. "Bring me proof of this outrage. This girl I kept under my roof. She belongs to no man." But the truth was undeniable. By the following week, word reached him from multiple sources. Lila was no longer alone. She had been embraced by the Sky Arrow tribe, clothed in their traditions, respected among the women, and called Moonflower by the children. And beside her stood Kaya Blackhawk, the Apache king, fearsome in reputation, unwavering in resolve, and utterly devoted to her. The Duke's pride burned hotter than ever. How dare someone like Kaya claim her, defying the social hierarchy and everything he had ever believed? He had thought she was weak, plain, and powerless. Now she was cherished by a warrior who commanded respect not just from men, but from the land itself. He returned to the manor's balcony, overlooking the vast plains. Imagining her smiling beneath the stars beside Kaya, the thought made his hands tremble with helpless fury. Who would want anything to do with you? He had asked weeks ago, mocking her worth. Now the answer was clear, echoing across the frontier. The greatest warrior in the West. Meanwhile, Lila and Kaya stood atop a high mesa, the wind tugging at their hair, the canyon stretching endlessly before them. Kaya's arm was draped around her shoulders, his grip protective yet tender. She leaned into him, her heart full, her past pain like a distant memory. "Do you think he'll come for us?" she asked, eyes scanning the horizon. Kaya shook his head with a confident smile. "Let him learn the truth. He cannot undo what has been done. You belong here with me, and no man's anger can change that." Lila laughed softly, the sound carrying across the cliffs. "I cannot believe it," she said. "He actually thought he could decide my life, and now—" She trailed off, shaking her head in wonder. "Now it's clear that your life is your own," Kaya said. He lifted her hand to his lips, kissing it reverently. "And mine to protect." The Duke, meanwhile, could do nothing but fume within the confines of his manor. The frontier whispered the story of Lila Harwood, the orphan girl who had been mocked and scorned, yet claimed by the Apache king. Neighbors spoke of her courage, her resilience, and the unwavering devotion of Kaya Blackhawk. The more he raged, the more the story grew, turning into legend. It was a lesson the Duke would never forget. Words meant to wound, pride used to control, and cruelty intended to dominate had failed utterly. The girl he thought worthless had found love, freedom, and honor beyond his reach. And the man who claimed her would stop at nothing to keep her safe. For Lila, the past no longer held power over her. She had survived humiliation, fear, and confinement. She had embraced a life where her choices mattered, her voice carried weight, and her heart could finally rest in the arms of a man who cherished her entirely. That night, under the open sky, Kaya held her close. The firelight of the tribe flickered around them, casting shadows on the canyon walls. Lila felt the steady strength of him, the certainty in his gaze, and the unspoken promise that she would never again know fear or loneliness. She lifted her face to his. "I belong to you," she whispered, voice trembling with awe and love. "And I to you," Kaya replied, pressing his lips to hers with a gentle finality that erased every doubt and fear. Far across the plains, the Duke would forever remember the truth. The girl he had scorned was no longer under his control, no longer invisible, and no longer anyone's to dismiss. She had been claimed, protected, and loved by the Apache king himself, and in the vastness of the Wild West, under starlit skies and boundless horizons, Lila Harwood had finally found her home and her heart.